to the Let's Talk Crypto podcast, where we discuss the latest Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset news.
Hey everybody, hope you're all well. I'm your host, Wes Carlson. This is episode 25 of the Let's Talk Crypto podcast. It was recorded on the 18th of September 2019. This is chapter 1 of the Bitcoin Influencer series, a set of interviews with influencers in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency space, many of whom I've been following for quite some time. They're all passionate about Bitcoin and each contribute to the space in their own way. Today, I have Vortex. He is a well-known content creator and outspoken Bitcoin supporter who loves sound money and personal sovereignty. We had a really great discussion, which included some exciting predictions. I hope you enjoy it. Let's talk to the man himself. Let's get going. All right, man. Well, welcome to Let's Talk Crypto. This is episode 25, and we've got the famous Vortex on with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, welcome, my man. It's an absolute honor having you on. I've been watching you for a few years now, and I think I can track you back to about 2015 on the Bitcoin. I think you did it on Sundays. Is that right? The Bitcoin show? Or what?
It's kind of funny. It's moved various different days. And that was really mainly to accommodate guests, not so much to accommodate ratings per se, as a couple of people might have suggested. It was actually just to accommodate guests in various parts of the world. So we were on Mondays at one point. Then we went to Fridays, and then we went to we went to Mondays, then Saturdays, and then Sundays. And so now that's where we've stayed. We're still at Sundays every other Sunday at noon Pacific.
I totally get that. I mean, trying to schedule these things is a real pain in the butt. But I mean, even more so for you, because what I liked about your show right from the beginning was that you had several people on panel style, and there was this whole free-flowing conversation going on about Bitcoin. And I learned so much from listening to your show, and I would never miss it. My family hate you.
Oh, no. Tell them I'm sorry for whatever I did.
I'll tell you why, because we would go for a Sunday drive in my car, and I got two sons. At that time, okay, there was only one son, but I've got two now, and ever since I've been listening to your show. And when I drive them around, we go on a family drive on a Sunday, I'd play it obviously via my phone, but through the surround sound system in my car. And they had to listen to an hour or two of your talk show. It was like, tortured. Oh, Dad, Bitcoin again. Oh, we're listening to, is that the Vortex talking? They actually know your voice. I mean, so
that's funny. That's really great to hear. It's funny how many people really exhaust the patience of their friends, family, coworkers, and so on, right? So this is pretty much the same reason why I actually started the show. Pretty much all of my family went the same. They got sick of my voice as well, believe it or not. My own family, girlfriend, or wife, friends, family, pretty much everybody, at some point got sick of me talking about it. So that was one of the actual inspirations for starting the show.
So that's where I picked you up, was when it was on the World Crypto Network, and you were with, I think, I don't know if Mad Bitcoin at the time, and obviously there were various different shows in that, but now you've moved along, and now you're with the CryptoCast Network, or you've started the CryptoCast Network, from what I understand.
Oh, that's correct. I actually founded the CryptoCast Network YouTube channel. Yes.
That's right, yeah. And moving on to bigger and greater things on your side of things. I remember back in the day, I met quite a lot of the Bitcoin people that I follow now via your show. I mean, like people like Francis Pouliot, excuse my pronunciation.
It's tough. Francis Pouliot. I think that's probably the technical, but I don't even know.
Exactly. People like that. Trace Mayer. Yeah, I actually first heard him on your show. And I can probably rattle them off. John of Bitriffle, I can't remember his last name.
John Cavallo.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of the cool guys that I like to follow and listen to, especially if they're involved in a panel discussion, I actually met through your show. So it's, as I said, it's an honor to have you on.
Absolutely great to hear. That was really a big inspiration for getting all the guests and panelists, because I just wanted to create a show that I liked and that I wanted to hear and that I would like to be able to hear. And really, that's what it was: is that free flowing discussion. That was really the end goal.
Yeah. And were you doing anything related to content creation before that?
Absolutely not. Pretty much Bitcoin took over my life. So, I mean, found it in 2012, really started understanding it in 2013, started commenting on CoinDesk 2014 and 2015, then in Twitter on 2015 and 2016, started my show at the end of 2015. And I just kind of kept falling further down the rabbit hole.
CoinDesk, I didn't realize you did, did you create content for them or
So for CoinDesk, I actually did comments. So I was in the comment section because really there was a big actual Bitcoin community on the CoinDesk website back in the day before crypto Twitter got big and took off. This was back in the day. That was the only place you could have civilized discussion, because essentially there was Reddit, right? And then that was pretty much it. That was really much it. So CoinDesk became a really big community for actual crypto, Bitcoin, specifically Bitcoin discussion on the internet. And really after that, sort of everybody kind of migrated to crypto Twitter as that started to get bigger and bigger. So it was really already CoinDesk comments was pretty much dead by like 2017.
Yeah, I must say I never ever went there. I mean, I did use Reddit and Bitcoin Talk back in the day.
It was probably dead by 2016, really. I mean, it only lasted about a year or two.
Okay. And I suspect you never ever used the forums at bitcoin.com, right?
I actually didn't. I mean, of course, I've read a lot. That's where you go to find the history, a lot of history of Bitcoin. But no, I actually never did comment on the forums. Absolutely not. I went from CoinDesk. I didn't really enjoy Reddit that much mostly because of the, I guess it wasn't really professional enough for me to be able to have a good discussion. So there was a little bit too much static, a little bit too much noise. So for me, there was really only CoinDesk. And then I found Twitter. And of course, that is where I've stayed and will continue to stay. Yeah. So for me, really, I was sort of, I guess you could say I was sort of primed already maybe to receive Bitcoin because of course I was already on the Alex Jones bandwagon back then a little bit, just trying to figure out the history of money and the history of how this planet sort of decided to govern itself essentially, right, over the centuries. And there's been, dating all the way back to, of course, when it was religion ruling everything and things like that to the kings and the clergy and such. So I had a focus on that. I sort of saw the path that the world was heading in. I saw the essentially the curve that we were heading on there. So when I first read about Bitcoin from a Slashdot article, that was the very first one that I had, the very first article that I read about Bitcoin, because it was already in my purview. I'm actually a web developer, so I was already a technical person, reading these geeky forums like Slashdot. And so I found that article, I found the Silk Road article on Slashdot. And I was like, holy smokes, what is this? I had no idea. I mean, I, of course, immediately, just like everybody else, like Andreas Antonopoulos, like everybody, dismissed it pretty much right away. Dismissed it as pretty much World of Warcraft gold, internet money, didn't really find it too fascinating. What I found more fascinating was the actual existence of Silk Road. The fact that the self-governed body outside of the purview or the control of the state was existing. Like, it was a self-governing entity, and it was a people with a creed. And I just couldn't believe that, that actually was existing. That was, for me, really the most fascinating thing. And on top of that was, again, the community, where if you went on Silk Road, you would actually see all the reviews. And almost, if you look at the studies that were done, all of the reviews on most of the reviews of this of the items were all like rating 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. Like 90% of them was 5 out of 5. There was an actual real thriving community of goods and services and respect and things like that. And so
a real economy.
Yeah, real economy. And so that just really fascinated me to no end there. And then that is what essentially, reading more about Silk Road led me to read more about Bitcoin. And that, of course, led me down the rabbit hole. So really, it wasn't until I found it in 2012, but it probably wasn't until end of 2013, or maybe even middle to end of 2013, that it really started striking me as this opportunity to be a financial system outside of the state, this really an actual competitor to the status quo.
So you actually saw Bitcoin in action. In other words, you saw a marketplace or an economy that was operating and had no business operating. In other words, why wasn't it shut down? Like, how is this thing allowed to exist in a world where the smallest things are shut down like immediately? And you investigated, dug a little bit further, and found, free money, as in free, sovereign money. In other words, money that can exist outside the control of the state, was actually lubricating the cogs, enabling this to happen.
And not just even that, but I mean, I was a web developer and I didn't really even know about Tor, the Tor network. So that led me down that rabbit hole, the privacy rabbit hole of Tor and things like that. I already had known about, certain understandings of government and money and the state and economics, just basic understandings, very surface scratching stuff. Again, because mostly I was just a web developer, programmer for the most part, so I didn't really have a background in economics, mathematics, or anything like that. So, but man, that was a huge just crash course in economics for me, and really I learned a lot and started reading a lot. Started reading about Austrian economics. Started reading about all sorts of various histories of money, just money itself, and all through the years, of course, that you get led to the big circular stones as well, and even Safety put that in his book, the Bitcoin Standard. So it's just fascinating, this huge history of how humans decided to actually transact value, and really it brought the Silk Road and Bitcoin brought it all to the forefront for me, and really once I found Bitcoin, even Silk Road became just very less fast. I was actually before it even got shut down, I was already almost bored with it. I'm just focused on Bitcoin itself, just completely hands down on Bitcoin.
The innovation was Bitcoin, not the Silk Road, basically. Exactly.
That's what I discovered. It was actually it was cool. So cool technology, to over the Tor network and things like that. But no, it was Bitcoin that was the center of it all.
Do you think there's a common thread in the type of person that sort of is into Bitcoin at the moment? In other words, that like you started off saying that you hinted towards the fact that you might have been a little bit of a conspiracy sort of bug, that type of thing. And one thing led to another, and you discovered Bitcoin via the Silk Road and things like that. Do you think that there's a sort of common thread that we can pin down, that a person who's involved in Bitcoin today? Or do you think it's got to a stage where it's really broadened and is starting to appeal to a wider spectrum of people?
Yes. So at this point, and I still continue to say this on my podcast, it's really, really early days still. I probably won't stop saying that until probably around 2024. At that point, governments might start to hold it, but definitely large corporations will be holding it, and large entities. And so it's really, really early days still. Between 2024 is when I expect, like I say, the Lightning Network to be in full swing. And as common as a PayPal phone, to have the node software itself built into routers, by 2028 for sure, built into operating systems and routers. Because remember, I don't know if your audience knows, but like for example, TCP/IP, the actual TCP/IP stack itself, the protocol stack, the open source protocol stack, was not built into Windows originally. Like that was not built into Windows until Windows 95. Windows 3.1, you actually had to go and download the stack and configure it, and then configure the modem to use that, and then download a web browser, compile that, and then configure the web browser to use your modem. So it was basically where we are right now in Bitcoin. And so I see the whole thing repeating over and over again. This is why I can make these predictions so easily. So for me, I see it all replaying again, and this is absolutely what Bitcoin is going to do. So again, very, very early days right now, but we can see the path. The trajectory is absolutely clear. We have all of the 7 network effects that Trace Mayer outlines all the time. The biggest one right now, of course, is speculation, but that's always going to be pretty big for a while until we get a big enough circular economy. But then we have the financialization of Bitcoin on Wall Street. That's going huge, and things like that. But again, Bitcoin really, arguably is going to be a joke until we're at least $1 trillion market cap. To the average person in finance, to the average global economic or macro hedge fund person who's understanding this stuff and trading this stuff. So once we get past $1 trillion, then we can start becoming noticeable. And really be on the radar. You could argue we're on the radar a bit right now, somewhere between the 9th and 12th, largest currency on the planet. But it's still we're literally still less of a market cap than the net worth of Jeff Bezos. So it's very, very. Now, as far as who the person is that it attracts, really, because we are at early days, it is going to attract more of this ideological type of person, a person who's probably a little bit more woke than the average citizen, and that's really important. But fair enough. Remember, we gain these new users in cycles because of Bitcoin's halving. And this is also where all of my predictions are centered around, is halvings, 2024, 2028, and so on. Yeah. And so because of this,
that type of, that wave of adoption, that's sort of baked into the system. I mean, Satoshi even refers to it, that it's sort of going to a result of how it's been designed.
Yeah. So real quick, just to complete the thought, as soon as, when we get those big run-ups, that's when you get your average regular person, maybe get rich person, or just person who's thinking about maybe savings. But then when in the bear markets, right, when we get new people there, that's going to be more of the ideological person. And that cycle is going to continue until Bitcoin is large enough to where people are using it without actually understanding it. If you look at the surveys, the average person doesn't even know they're using the internet when they're on Facebook.
I did not know that. That blows my mind. That blows my mind, and that's a great example as to what we could expect when somebody, for example, in the future is streaming money via the Lightning Network.
Absolutely. They're going to be on a YouTube channel. They're going to be receiving money in like real time. And they're just going to be like, oh, yeah, this is how it's done. You guys didn't do this?
Yeah. You don't know what TCP/IP is? Basically, this is the TCP/IP of money. You didn't know that.
Absolutely. This is what we call, we're calling the stack essentially at this point BNP-LP to sort of mirror the TCP/IP stack, which is of course the Bitcoin protocol and the Lightning Network protocol.
Yeah, I've seen you pushing that on Twitter. I've liked it every time and shared it, so don't worry. I agree, 100%.
Awesome.
There must have been some people in the very beginning stages that you can remember, reflecting back now in hindsight, that you saw as mentors or people that you, to this day, you can remember that gave you some aha moments or enlightened you in a specific way.
Sure. I would assume probably the biggest person in my mind is probably Andreas Antonopoulos. I think, with that first talk back in 2013, I think that's when, it really started to, I think that was a big aha moment for me. Because again, understanding it as this financial system was, was very scratching the surface. And then Andreas really put it into perspective about about the decentralization and the censorship resistance. So that was really where that aha moment came to me was from Andreas. So in 2013. So that was probably going to be my absolute biggest influence. But that's what's beautiful is that, I do try to get voices that I believe have something to say, something valuable to say about Bitcoin. I try to give them a bigger microphone via my show and via my Twitter account. And so there's just been really so many people over the years that have given me insight and information. And for those people, I do try to, give them more attention. And there's been a couple, of course, over the years that didn't quite work out so well, right? Like Andy Hoffman, to name a couple, right? Richard Hart, a couple of, very intelligent people, and that's great. And they actually did some amazing and interesting contributions to the conversation of Bitcoin while they still understand, at the time, right? And so that's been great. But again, there's just been so many people, and if you've been following me long enough, you'll pretty much know who all those people are because they'll be on my show. Right. And so they'll be on my show. They'll be me tweeting about them. They'll be me talking about them. They'll be me retweeting about them. I guess another person that comes to mind would probably be Dan Held. Maybe Drew. I can never pronounce his last name. He's over there, I think, at Adamant Capital. He's actually a scientist, a physicist, actually.
Yes.
It starts with a B. His last name starts with a B.
I know who you're talking about. Oh man, it's also slipped my mind now. But I mean, also Trace Mayer. He's also
of course. The Trace Mayer's network effects and his Mayer multiple was another aha moment for me. Dan and Drew are more recent, but dating back, Andreas and Trace are the two biggest ones. Then Max Kaiser sort of really put into perspective the amount of manipulation that was possible in the current financial system, because you sort of have this high level 10,000 foot understanding, but then Max laid out actual numbers and actual accounts and actual events that you can look and say, okay, wow, look at the tens and hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud that you can actually point to in black and white that these banks are committing every single year. And so that was a big aha moment for me as well. Those are the biggest ones, I think. Yeah,
I think Max also brought the other side of the walls. He brought the other perspective. In other words, we always suspect these things, we always talk about them and banks this, banks that, governments this, governments that. But he actually brought the figures and the facts in his elaborate and flowery way of presenting it, of course, which is also catchy. He made it real,
Absolutely.
And I think we owe him a lot as a community for what he's done, and the amount of awareness he's brought about is incredible, especially with the platform that he's got on his show.
Absolutely.
How did you get your hands on your first Bitcoin?
I think it was like MoneyGram and the red phone. You wire, I wired an account, right? So MTGOX essentially. So MTGOX. Wired via the red phone money to MTGOX, and there was some bank account that I had to do, and it was like $1,000 or something like that. And that was where I got my first coin, was MTGOX.
Okay. Did you get hurt on the MTGOX?
No, absolutely not. I saw the warning sign 6 to 9 months before, it crashed. I mean, they were freezing accounts. They were freezing various types of withdrawals. They were freezing the ability to add more money. There was just so many things that they were doing. To me, it was just red sign after red sign after red sign. So, and of course I tweeted about it, but for me, there was so many warning signs about 6 to 9 months before, leading all the way up to the final crash. So no, I was definitely out of there. I did not want to speculate. I did not. I mean, when accounts start, when withdrawals started to get frozen, that's where I start. That's when I walk away. when people are freezing people's accounts and the ability to withdraw. That's when I walk away. So yeah, I was fortunate enough to leave there about 6 to 9 months before it actually collapsed.
Jeez, you were well ahead of the pack there. I mean, it kind of reminds you of banks, yeah, when they start freezing withdrawals and that. So yeah, that was like the antithesis of what Bitcoin's all about. Very lucky though to have escaped that one. But
absolutely, me and my wife still remember, watching the ticker when it finally froze. It was a very surreal moment. It was very terrifying and surreal, scary moment, because obviously at that point, Mt. Gox held 80+% of the world's Bitcoin liquidity. So it was a very wake-up call again to how early we were back then and how early we are still. We get wake-up calls all the time. But yeah, that was an epic moment that I don't think we'll ever forget.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a recording of Andreas, I think, on, I don't know what show it was. It might have been the World Crypto Network, or it might have where the price is actually crashing and all mayhem is breaking loose, and they're actually commentating about it as it's going on. And
it was the World Crypto Network.
Yeah, exactly. And Andreas actually commentates. He says, "Yes, like this is going to change things going forward. Like, this is going to be an event that will be remembered well into the future and be quoted many times over." But you know what? It's also school fees being paid by many people. And I think since then, and I've heard you've even said multiple times on many episodes, don't store your Bitcoins on an exchange. No matter how safe and secure you may think it may be, things do go wrong. And Bitcoin inherently is designed to be held. You're supposed to be in control of your keys, in control of your Bitcoin.
Well, of course, we got nothing against speculation. That's one of Bitcoin's biggest network effects. And so, of course, people are going to put money on exchanges and trade, and that's fine, guys. Like, whatever you want to do. But what we're saying here is that don't put any money on on an exchange that you're not fully prepared to lose entirely.
Yes, and obviously with everything, minimize your risk, reduce your exposure. Yeah, I think is the takeaway from that.
Absolutely.
What is your absolute, pin it down to one thing for us, Vortex? What is your absolute favorite property of Bitcoin? One thing.
One thing, definitely the 21 million cap. That's definitely, there's just nothing else. Trace has said it millions of times. Really, the only thing that's scarce in this universe is Bitcoin and time. That's it. There's nothing else that we can't recreate somehow, some way with some kind of technology and, in the distant future and things like that. So really, what it boils down to then is mathematics, right? The universe is fundamentally oriented in such a way that we can allow cryptographic proofs to be unbreakable. Literally unbreakable to the point to where mathematics inherently allows us to have privacy, inherently allows us to hold value as an individual. So inherently making us, a self-sovereign individual, inherently creating self-sovereignty. So that is probably the most important property by far. But of course, you can't just use that, obviously, because there's always going to be somebody that's going to try to inflate that. So that's why we have the beautiful rules, the beautiful full nodes out there that are validating every single block.
Absolutely. Okay, well, fair enough. I think I'd have to agree with you on that, and I think most people would as well. So now, turning it on its head, if there was one thing that you could change about Bitcoin, and I mean anything, including consensus rules, but without causing a fork or splitting the community, what would that be?
Everything. That's the thing about Bitcoin is that. And this is what I tweeted this all through 2017 and 2018, but people didn't believe me. But they believe me now after the UASF, is that any single change really in Bitcoin is going to be contentious. Any single proposal that you put in Bitcoin, even if it's a soft fork, it's going to be contentious to some. So the idea is to try to get 90+%, consensus. So you can never get 100% consensus on everything. So with that said, even something small it might be difficult to change in the future. We would hope that the community would come together and try to form consensus around things that are going to be a net positive for everybody. For example, new technologies like Schnorr signatures that are going to come up in a new software probably in the next 12 to 24 months. But I guess probably the biggest thing I'd change, because and this is going to, of course, be contentious. So that's why I say every single change is contentious. But so you can't not have a non-contentious change. But so the change that I would make then in that regard would be probably the 4-year halving cycle. That's a bit too steep. I think it's a bit too big of a shock to the market, in my opinion. I would probably steepen that off to, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, or even an actual even flow where every single block.
Do you mean a more incremental sort of, but the same sort of rate, but just spread out a little bit further, so it's less of a supply shock?
Same rate, but spread out more evenly across maybe every single block.
Yeah.
Or even,
I wonder why in that case it was made every 4 years. I wonder if there's
and that's the interesting thing. Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about Bitcoin is that any property, every single property about Bitcoin is really not that monumental. So when I say by that is that the world itself was going to conform to whatever Bitcoin was going to be with that finite supply. So it could have been 2-year halvings, it could have been 8-year halvings. It didn't really matter. The most, like I said, the most important property was that fixed supply and the ability to validate that in a decentralized manner. So with that in there, and that being said, then there's nothing that you can actually do to change that.
Okay, that makes sense. I've never thought of it in that way, but yeah, that makes 100% sense. I do like the idea of it being more incremental. I think that it's sort of more of a consistent rate of decline in terms of the emission would be nice.
I would love that, but like I say, the world would have conformed to whatever Satoshi would have put in whatever property. But man, it would have been nice to have some slightly less shock to the network.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even just leading up to it. So obviously you've got all the people sort of trying to accumulate more and miners trying to sort of build up their inventory, and that old saying, buy the rumor, sell the news type of event. When the market knows an event is happening, there's a lot of shenanigans that go on around it. And
absolutely, it's true.
That could be solved with, partly solved with what you proposed there. Okay, here's one that I was really looking forward to asking you. And that is, if you could go back in time and discover Bitcoin all over again, right? However, one caveat, with the same knowledge that you have now, what would you do differently?
Well, of course, as everybody is going to say, we would just buy more coin, right? Just buy a lot more coin, like just boatloads more coin. Because at the end of the day, people really think that the hodlers have it easy. They think that we can just, sit here and silently hold through all of these years of these big booms and these big busts, like it's just very easily. But in fact, the actual reality is that it's absolutely extremely difficult to hold Bitcoin for long periods of time because of the volatility of these early days. Now, in the later years, past 2024 into 2028, people won't have to worry about this so much. But these early years, and especially into the early days of 2012, 13, 14, every day could have been Bitcoin's last. Like there could have been a bug. There could have been all sorts of things that could have been wrong. Again, empty Gox blew up. There could have been a myriad of things. There was no guarantees, absolutely. And of course, there's still no guarantees today. However, with the amount of battle tested, battle armor that Bitcoin has at this point, being on the internet 24/7, the Lindy effect is absolutely applying to Bitcoin these days. Every single day that it's still there, that means it's given a bigger chance to still survive the next day. So Bitcoin is at this point very, very hardened. But really, in those early days, we went from $1 to $32, back down to $2 and to $200, and then back down to $12, and then all the way up to $1,200. So there's a lot of people out there that think and might have some spite even for long-term Bitcoin holders. But really, guys, it was absolutely not so easy. Very, very, very difficult, and continues to be difficult as we hit more extremes, like from 20K down to 3K. And so, but there is this layer of belief that keeps Bitcoin hodlers holding, right? This hodler of last resort, this idea that Bitcoin will have this layer of people that will never sell because they want something different. And just that alone will hold all the way down to $1 if we have to.
What a great answer. Hodlers of last resort. I think that's from Trace Mayer, right?
That's absolutely right.
Have you ever tried your hand at trading?
So really, what I actually find more fascinating than trading and profits and all that kind of stuff is really just technical analysis. I find that pretty interesting because it becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy where everybody else is looking at relatively the same charts and relatively the same patterns. You end up being able to draw lines and have probabilities where the price may go. And that to me is just kind of endlessly fascinating. There's so many different aspects about that you could study and details to go into. But really, I traded a little bit, was terrible at it, not really that good of a trader. Again, I just kind of find the technical analysis more fascinating. And really, these days, I just do very, 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 very long-term trades. And, just beyond dollar cost averaging, just a couple of very long-term trades, like 6, 8, 9 months long, things like that. And very, very, very rare do I trade. But I do absolutely keep still paying attention to the technical analysis for the long term. The macro is what really interests me the most, more than like the daily, like what the price is going to be tomorrow or the next day or even next month. Prices that interest me are 6, 12 months out, 2, 3, 5 years out. And of course, all the way out using projections like the stock to flow ratio of past the year 2028 and things like that, where Bitcoin's is well over millions of dollars. And that type of stuff is really fascinating.
So you don't find yourself having to glance at the price every morning when you wake up, or?
Well, of course, every single technical analysis, every single day, we still like to find out what's going on. That's just part of the. It's like waking up in Christmas every single day, figuring out what's going to happen. You never know. Maybe you'll get the thing you want, maybe you won't. So that's just the drama part of it. But really, the only reason I pay attention to it at this point is the drama, because the price is, when I really I'm a big. I'm more of a macro person. So what I study a lot is trends and what's going on in the big economy and the bigger picture. And so that price does help actually give me some kind of picture of what's going on in the macro.
So how did you come about the dates that you mentioned earlier in the podcast? You said by 2024, I think you said, you think that governments will be buying Bitcoin, I think you said. And I think you mentioned another date, 2028. You just mentioned just now something stock to flow ratio. There's some chart you're predicting something happening by 2028. What was it around those two dates, if you don't mind me?
So I have a few predictions right now. The price predictions are definitely Bitcoin's going to be well over $100,000 by the end of 2021, based on current stock to flow models, the Sharpe ratio, and historic price discovery for Bitcoin, and going along with these 4-year cycles. And then we're absolutely predicting Lightning to be mainstream by 2024 in everybody's phone, like a PayPal app. And then, of course, mainstream in 2024, that's when governments will start holding it as well. Governments and large central banks will absolutely be holding it, maybe publicly, maybe not publicly, but absolutely holding it. And then, of course, by 2028, the game is pretty much over at that point. We're well into millions of dollars per Bitcoin. Governments are publicly holding Bitcoin. Bitcoin software is built into every device that you have, your laptop, your television, just like Netflix is at the moment. So the ability to actually transact will be much easier than we can actually comprehend at this point. It's almost like trying to imagine sort of HD 4K streaming in 1995. It's a little bit difficult, but we can sort of grasp what that might look like. And that, of course, would be, again, instantaneous streaming payment to any person on the planet, regardless of where your location is. So that is, of course, if that were the case, then that would be a new golden age, a new free economy with freer trade than we've ever had in the history of this planet.
Wow. I love the way you paint that picture. So what would you say is the most common mistake or misconception when it comes to Bitcoin or the understanding of Bitcoin?
The biggest misconception, I guess, really, we all have sort of a big misconception at some point of what Bitcoin is, because Bitcoin is so many things. That's why on my profile, I just pretty much say Bitcoin is, because its existence is really all that matters. It's really all that matters. You can project your subjective understandings and opinions and color it however you want to do of what Bitcoin is. But at the end of the day, all that matters is that it exists. And as long as it exists, then this planet will be forever changed, because this, of course, is the fifth abstraction of money, the most abstraction money that we've ever had, the most freest money that we've ever had. So this is something that's completely unprecedented in our human history. So just existing is going to already do things like keep governments in check, keep central banks in check, create, start to break down monopolies like the dollar. I can never say that word, homogeny, the dollar homogeny. Yeah. So it's already starting to break down, things like that. And so just its existence is really important. But the biggest misconception, I guess, is that people think they understand it.
There's a nice saying that Andreas used to say, and I'll probably mess it up completely, but he said something along the lines, you can't turn this omelet back into eggs.
That's right. The genie is out of the box. Pandora is out of the box. This is forever now a world post Bitcoin and pre Bitcoin, and even Bitcoin is again the most truth that we've ever had again in the history of this planet. We've as a planet have never been able to agree on the ledger every single 10 minutes. This is just again unprecedented. So this will create such a trust. That again, something that we've never seen before. So everybody will eventually trust this thing like you wouldn't believe, to the point to where instead of Unix time in computer software, we'll probably switch to Bitcoin time because that is, even more truthful than standard ways of mesuring time.
It's verified.
Bitcoin is something that everybody can agree that it is actually verified. This actually did happen. So, Bitcoin it'll evolve, continue to evolve into things that we just can't imagine. But really the biggest part about it is trust. The thing that we've solved is trust. The ability now to be able to trust this ledger instead of a people, instead of a central bank, instead of a central entity. That is the invention.
And what about people like Peter Schiff with gold? What will happen to them?
Well, metals will always continue to play a place, of course. But there's been many tech companies that have gone, come and gone over the years. People like AOL. There's no way, AOL can ever, nobody can ever take over AOL, right? When it was at its peak. But things happen, trends change, and technology evolves. And so as Bitcoin evolves and as people evolve with Bitcoin, it'll be similar again to the internet. That's just the biggest analogy that we can always make with Bitcoin is look at the history of the internet. So, there was a lot of people that were calling for the internet's demise, right? A lot of people. And now all of those people are absolutely communicating over the internet every single day. And usually their job 100% depends on it, right? So, all of the, for example, editors.
Not biased at all. Right.
All the claims of the editors that the internet was going to go down, they now, of course, all write out. They all have blogs and they all have Twitter accounts and they all write over it. So really, it's just what happens to him. He fades away into history, just like all of the other FUD that has come to Bitcoin, that has come and been squashed by Bitcoin.
Yeah. True. I mean, we had a bit of a scare about the UASF time. I remember that it was quite you had to have a lot of belief at the time, and watching shows like yours and the Bitcoin Talk group, and watching like people like Tone and Jimmy on your show. It helped. It helped me, at least. Anyway, I definitely didn't sell. I was resolute. I ran my node, and I was fully, on the right side of history. And I must say, those times are very testing. And and I'm pretty sure we will go through a few more of those type of things, just in ways we haven't imagined yet. People might even come along and challenge the 21 million cap supply, and I think that would be a real battle on our hands.
Oh yes, that was a level 1 fight. That was level 1 boss. We still have the final boss, and of course the final boss is the actual government, the state itself, the central banking system, the Bank of International Settlements, the World Bank, the IMF. These are the final bosses.
Yeah, when there's nothing left to lose, things can get really dirty. So right now it's almost seen as insignificant threat. It's not really something on the radar, I think, at the moment.
Like I said earlier in the podcast, until we reach $1 trillion market cap, we are just a fly on the radar. We might not even be on the radar at all until we hit the trillion. Then once we hit the trillion, then we're going to be on the radar. Then when we hit the 10 trillion, then that's when governments will start thinking about it. And as we rise to the $1,500 trillion mark, that's when absolutely governments will absolutely be holding large chunks of Bitcoin at the $100 trillion mark.
So in your opinion, or as you wish to put it, what is a Bitcoin maximalist?
So unfortunately, there was a term that was coined by a rival blockchain. It was coined by Vitalik Buterin, the creator of Ethereum. And so it was just his subjective understanding of why Bitcoiners continued to try to remind people of this unstoppable money, of Bitcoin having this unstoppable property, this property of being unstoppable money. And it was really the focus of Bitcoin, the focus of Bitcoiners that allowed Bitcoin to be what it is today. And so that was a misunderstanding of the focus of Bitcoin. That was, Vitalik thinking that, just because they think that they think that everything else is a scam, that they must just be like this maximalist and only believe in Bitcoin because of Bitcoin. But of course, that's not the case. The case is that most people that are call themselves or that are called claim to be Bitcoin maximalists, they're just people that believe in a sound money. They're just people that believe in the ability for Bitcoin to be the world's reserve currency. And really, there's nothing and literally nothing else that's even attempting to try to compete with that. And so, like for me, I try to continue to tell people that the only actual Bitcoin dominance chart that you need to worry about is that of the dollar, gold, and Bitcoin. That's the actual dominance chart. Bitcoin does not compete with the regular cryptocurrencies because Bitcoin is a base money, like gold, like the dollar. This is a much different type of money or money supply than things like securities, right? Other financial instruments and things like that. So this base money that is Bitcoin, this property of Bitcoin being base money, is not something that is shared with any other crypto. It's simply not possible to have base money as any other crypto because, again, almost every other crypto, including Ethereum, can be shut down by a state or by a state actor or by a government actor. It can absolutely be shut down to the point to where nobody would believe in it enough to hold it. And remember, most of the development right now on Ethereum is actually funded by consensus. So, I mean, if consensus goes away, most of the development of Ethereum goes away, and people don't seem to understand this. So, again, to wrap it up, Bitcoin maximalist was this term that was the derogatory term that was coined by Vitalik Buterin that some Bitcoin people have decided to take up as a mantle and hold as a medal. But myself, I've never liked the term. I don't use the term, and I don't claim to be a Bitcoin maximalist in any way. I just, if anything, you can call me a sound money maximalist. That would be probably the only thing that I would accept, because I understand that the reason why we're here is to steal fire from the gods. The reason why we're here is financial sovereignty, is to create a financial system outside of the power of the state, to not have to worry and be enslaved by these centralized systems. And so anything else to me is a joke. And so when you're trying to talk about crypto kitties and saving bank fees, and with blockchain, that's absolutely laughable to the actual overall mission that most Bitcoiners and Bitcoin maximalists, quote unquote, are trying to do. We are trying to change the world to provide this unstoppable money, to be able to create a freer world with freer trade than we've ever had in the existence of this planet. So this is what's important. So the term Bitcoin maximalist itself isn't even that important. Again, they're just trying to create this focus of this unstoppable money.
Boom. I love it. Absolutely love it. You got me all excited and riled up here. I can't even sit down.
It's, Bitcoiners who are pretty passionate people, we're pretty passionate about this stuff, and this is why we're here. This is what gets us up every single day, is this possibility to fix money, because again, I tweeted this out. I truly believe that if you can fix money, you can fix society, because money is one of the most important tools of society. If you can fix money, you can truly at least attempt to fix society. And really, that's what is the base of all of this, is to be able to make a better world.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it any better. And that's why you're here. So tell me, what new improvements are you most excited about? I know there's so many coming on board over the next couple of months. SegWit's unlocked a whole plethora of new improvements that have been streaming through, and proposals, pips. If you had to just pin it down to one or two, what are the ones that you're keeping an eye out and you can't wait to be incorporated?
Really, it's just the progress of Lightning is just continuing to boggle my mind to see how many people are getting on board with this. There's a big Lightning conference this fall. It is going to be the world's first Lightning conference. It's going to be October in Berlin, and I think that that's going to really cement Lightning in the global sort of blockchain economy, so to speak, as this thing that is so amazing and so real. Because you can look at the numbers right now. You can go to 1ml.com. You can see all the businesses. You can look at the research done by the block to see the hundreds of companies that is in the Lightning ecosystem right now. But really, with this conference, I think that's going to really bring a huge awareness to all of the different companies that is actually making up this Lightning ecosystem. So I guess the Lightning ecosystem itself is something that is growing much faster than I anticipated. And there's many companies that are incorporating this technology. So I guess that's probably the technology that I'm most excited about, because it's a dual-edged sword there. It's Bitcoin's scaling solution as well as Bitcoin's privacy solution, because this is encrypted by default, a lot like Tor nodes, a lot like Tor data, and even similar to confidential transactions being run on the Liquid network, where no party can actually see the encrypted data in the transaction except for the party who's sending it and the party who's receiving it, the end party who's receiving it. So that's going to be just a huge win. People are not going to understand, a lot of my big predictions about Bitcoin in the future revolve around a scaling solution like Lightning Network taking place and taking hold. And so without that, Bitcoin will mostly be a central sort of a clearing system, but with these layers above, like similar to the OSI model that we've built with the internet and Ethernet. If we can build this multi-layer approach, which is what the world is doing, especially with Lightning, we can build huge amounts of infrastructure above the base layer, layer after layer, and create more and more utility that complements the stack overall. So just really excited about Lightning. That's going to be the ticket that's going to take us really to the next level.
I couldn't agree more. When I first heard about Lightning back in, I think it might have been late 2015 actually, or early, somewhere around there. And how I saw it was somebody posted something on Reddit, giving a hint about Lightning, and then somebody else posted another a post saying, "I'm going to explain Lightning to you with an analogy of a cowboy walking into a saloon or something like this." And it was an amazing little story they gave about how this person, like there's different little shops or little stalls in a small little western town, like back in the day, and how this person, and there's a ledger and how things would work, and it was amazing. And I was just like, this is never going to happen. I mean, it's so abstracted in its description right now that it's just never going to happen. Like, this must be 10 or 20 years away. As much as I love Bitcoin and I was fully on board at that stage, I was like, oh man, this is not going to happen. And over the next couple months, as the debate got worse and worse between the big blockers and the SegWit camp. I mean, SegWit, I don't even think was being mentioned at that time yet. SegWit came a little bit later, but it just seemed so far-fetched that we would ever go down the route of having another layer on top of Bitcoin. And then suddenly it all just came together, and it was just like, is this real? Like, pinching myself. I still remember I was traveling overseas. I was in South Africa at the time, and I remember actually them like releasing the protocol and all that stuff with Elizabeth Stark, and that incredible what they've done there, and how fast, the pace that they've been doing the releases and improving it is just unbelievable. It's mind-blowing. The only thing I can think of is that it's such a pity that we were set back like a year or two.
Well, Bitcoin had to prove itself. We had to prove the censorship resistance. We had to prove the democracy, we had to prove that the consensus of the validation of the nodes. We had to prove that actually works. And so that, we needed to do that at some point. So it might as well, of course, have been at that time. But yeah, it wasn't really until 2017 that I even started foreseeing Lightning as this overall interoperable application layer that sits above Bitcoin that can actually connect and interconnect every other type of blockchain that actually wants to use the internet of money that is Bitcoin with its security and liquidity. That is going to be the connection that everybody else connects into, the plugin that everybody else plugs into to be able to use Bitcoin if you're going to use something other than Bitcoin's base layer. So it's going to be vastly important to be this connection hub that everything else is going to plug into, because Lightning really, you can really describe it as that really is peer-to-peer Bitcoin, because Bitcoin itself actually isn't peer-to-peer. It's actually, you send your transaction and it goes to, a node that gets validated and then mined. But actually, with Lightning, you actually open up a channel directly between two parties, and that really is peer-to-peer. That really is essentially peer-to-peer money. And what it does, what the Lightning Network is it's just a network of unsigned Bitcoin transactions. It's just, they are real Bitcoin transactions of real sats flying around. It's just that they haven't actually been, confirmed on the ledger yet until you want to settle. So they are Bitcoin transactions, just unconfirmed. Really no different than putting Bitcoin in like an open dime and putting that in your drawer.
Yes.
Technically that's locked up, quote unquote, right? Locked up, but it's absolutely real Bitcoin that you can use at any point in any time that you want to do.
Now this other crypto that's come along, or strange white paper that came about 2 years ago, I think it was, Mimblewimble, also with a similar sort of history to Bitcoin in terms of it having a anonymous sort of creator. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's any chance that could be Satoshi, or the group of people known as Satoshi, or do you think? So really, to me,
It's just another example of the power of the internet, the ability to just dead drop amazing technology right here, completely anonymous for the world to use. So to me, it's just when I read that, when I look at that story, I just look at the power of the internet itself. This is the power of true democratization of information that the internet allows for. And now in this next phase of the internet, really we can call it like the third wave of the internet. Now it's going to be in the financial realm. Now we're going to actually get into some real economics where it's not just the democratization of information, it's actually the democratization of financialization. And that is going to be huge. So, Mimblewimble just represents to me another phase of the internet, of people creating this amazing unstoppable technology. And that's pretty cool to see. Do I have any, inklings of something to be able to replace Bitcoin, or anything like that in the future being dead dropped? Absolutely not. I mean, you obviously cannot recreate the immaculate conception that was Bitcoin, because when Bitcoin was created, there was no other Bitcoin. So there was no other blockchain or anything like that. So nothing can actually be repeated in that organic way. But so to me, it's kind of like a cool little gift. And it is marks us in the next phase of where we're headed into this new world, now that we've put the second piece together, where the first piece again was this information, the second piece now is money. When you combine this now in digitally, that is just this unprecedented thing. It's the end result of the telegraph, right? This is the end, the final taken to its logical conclusion of telecommunications, the telecom industry now taken to its logical conclusion with the inclusion of financial networks like Bitcoin. So what do I see Grin as? Again, just sort of like a cool little technology. Some people saw it as a way to get rich. Of course, there's always many more opportunities. Some people probably did get rich off of it. There's always opportunities in this space to go ahead and try to do things, new things. And that's really great to see. The experimentation is great to see. What's just a bit unfortunate is just people, people thinking that it's anything more than another altcoin.
Yeah. The only thing that I enjoyed about it was the whole Harry Potter, the French names in Harry Potter, and that. I just thought it was intriguing, the whole anonymous.
It absolutely will be put to use, somehow, some way in the future. It's
some of the bits some of the bits of the privacy and that might be added to Bitcoin or whatever, or used in another BIP at a later stage or something like that,
or at another layer, the transactional layer, maybe layers above.
Yeah, who knows? Eh? So coming towards the end here, Vortex, and it's been great so far, hyper-Bitcoinization. And I don't need to ask you whether you think it might happen or not.
Well, maybe, perhaps. I can definitely elaborate more on it.
You could do a bit of like sign language. And you've even given out the dates in that. But in terms of the way it was written, and I think it was Daniel, his last name has slipped my mind now. The guy who wrote, do you remember his name? Hyper-Bitcoinization, that article he wrote back in the day.
Sure. So it was, I believe that was Daniel Krowitz who might have written that, but it was on the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute, which still to this day has amazing articles.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, the way they wrote it is people ended up sort of, I think, borrowing to buy Bitcoin and creating sort of like a loop where hyper-Bitcoinization. Do you think that is something which is plausible? It's a reality that we could be faced with, or?
Yeah. So what I think is that, this is going to play out over decades. I say this all the time, on my podcast, on my show, that this is not going to happen instantaneously. Hyper-Bitcoinization is not going to happen anytime soon. There will still be state power or state controlled currencies for probably at least, decade plus to come. I mean, it could be 10, 20, could be 50 years out. Because this is really, like I say, going to play out over decades. So this transition of power is not going to happen very, very, very quickly. What it's going to happen is it's going to be slow, right? And then it's going to happen all of a sudden. So it's going to take a while to get that all of a sudden. That could be decades out. So these currencies, like the dollar and whatever is going to replace it next, will absolutely still be going up against Bitcoin for a while into the future. They're going to play different roles. They're going to have different benefits and for different people. So, we can't just do one size fits all instantly. And, then we'd be no different than the dollar itself trying to take over the world, right? So Bitcoin itself will continuously organically grow and become bigger and bigger and bigger, because all it knows how to do is eat. That's literally its only job, is to eat. Fiat is to consider. continuously consume liquidity, because there is, again, nothing else on this planet or in this universe that is going to be as finite as Bitcoin, except time. So people will continuously realize this and continuously try to get more value out of it. So eventually, yes, we could have this debt cycle where people just borrow to get more Bitcoin, because it'll always be easier to borrow fiat than it is to borrow a harder money. But if you do take that to its logical conclusion, then yes, that could lead to hyper Bitcoinization. But again, that would be decades out. Even if Bitcoin, again, even if governments are holding, even if Bitcoin is millions and millions of dollars into the $100 trillion market cap by 2028, even if it does do that, it's still, there's still going to be other things like fiat and metals that are still going to hold percentages of the world's wealth. So that's important, to take into account. Of course, Bitcoin is going to grow many more thousands of percents before this is over, but that doesn't mean that the central banks or the governments aren't going to still try to control some part of the financial system, even if that's a tiny little option on the side of a website that you check with a button. Government fiat or free currency, Bitcoin, the free world's the people's currency, Bitcoin, that everybody else accepts anyway by default. There'll still be probably that little extra circle to use a government fiat for some time to come.
Free market money, right?
Free market money, and this free market money, make no mistake, will be like a brick wall when everything goes up against it. It will absolutely crash. So any of these, there's going to be tons of government blockchains and government cryptocurrencies that are going to come out over the next decade. There's going to be corporate currencies like Libra. There's going to be all these things that are going to come out, but it will all crash like a freaking car on a brick wall up against the sound money that is the unstoppable money that is Bitcoin. But that is such a slow crash that crash can play out over decades.
Oh man, I tell you what, everybody needs to take at least one tablet of Vortex every day just to remind us why Bitcoin is so freaking awesome. Really, 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 really cool, man. So tell us, as we wind up here, what have you got going on over the next coming months? Are you going to be attending any conferences? You mentioned the Lightning Network one, and I think you said in Germany. Are you going there? Tell people where they can find you and reach you.
Sure. So, the Light Network conference is going to be great. I wish I could make that one, but that is going to be a little bit farther away from me. I do have a prior engagement around that time. They just only announced that, I think, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. Yeah. So that's actually a relatively new announcement. So definitely check that out if you guys can make it in Berlin. But for me, what I'll be doing is mostly just doing my CryptoCast YouTube channel. It is a community supported YouTube channel. So there is a donation link. We don't actually accept sponsors or anything like that, because I think that would essentially just drown out the message of what we're trying to really bring to the table here. And so you can definitely find our support link and our Bitcoin address to support us at cryptocast.network. And of course, you can find the YouTube channel just by searching CryptoCast Network. And then all of my work and where you can find where I'll be is going to be at theonevortex.com. You can find out which conferences I'll be attending. I don't actually travel that much, but the ones that I do attend and or speak at will absolutely be there on the website at theonevortex.com. All spelled out, theonevortex.com. And of course, all my content can be found on Twitter. That's where I spend the majority of my time, probably too much time, at theonevortex, all spelled out.
Yeah, and absolutely. We're going to put that all in the links below on all the different platforms, including the donation addresses for Vortex there. It's a community-driven venture, and he is hell-bent on keeping it that way, which I support. And I'd really appreciate it if you guys can show your support and send some love in his way. Vortex,
thanks so much.
Been an absolute pleasure and honor having you on. I look forward to talking to you again, hopefully when Bitcoin has doubled in value. And if it hasn't, it doesn't matter. I still want to talk to you again because I need to be reminded how cool Bitcoin is. And I think everybody needs to be reminded and have at least one cup full of Vortex per day.
I would also recommend it. Hopefully be able to see you at a having party one of these times, man. Hopefully next year or maybe even the one after that.